I'm Florin. This is Simon. We are the hosts of the 17.7 pod. And we are happy to be joined today by Plant and Ella Einhell, both having a common interest in sustainability. And what we would like to get from our guests today is what drives them. What brings them so strong into the sustainability area? And we want to have an honest conversation on what drives them.
Thanks, Lauren. So, hi, Kate. So, just for some context, we met, didn't we, in a Tergar meditation and climate group. So we have some overlapping interest there. On your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as an awakened, balanced, and charismatic individual. I think I can attest to some of that. That's why I asked you to be here. Who works in environmental engineering, environmental communication, and net zero. Your LinkedIn profile says you're a project manager and HR professional with over 20 years of experience in that and in event management within nonprofit, corporate, and government organizations. And I think bicycles and water somehow feature pretty prominently, but you'll tell us about that shortly. On the other side of the screen, we have Ella Einhell, and welcome, Ella. So for some context, we met at a local coffee shop around the corner. I forget the name right now, but it's very good. What's the name of it, Ella? Do you know that name? Kayumi. Yeah. Okay, Kayumi. Yeah. Silly name in my opinion, but anyway, we got you reminded me that you were parking your van with a load of bones in it, and we got talking about your startup. So you're an artist and researcher whose practice operates at the intersection of material research and product design, revolving around the use of wasted resources and their transformation into innovative raw materials. That's what your website says. I saw some of your objects and they're certainly beautiful. And and I was intrigued because although I'm pretty much a vegetarian, at least, 99% of the time, I use leather, in my shoes and all the rest of it. And I was intrigued by the fact that your objects are using animal bones as their source. So, and this is, as Florin mentioned, this is our first podcast. So thank you both for joining. Florin, over to you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and welcome our guests. I was collecting some statistics on waste as we want to talk a bit about sustainability, and there's some shocking statistics which I have not been aware of. I'm going to quote some numbers now. So we got 53.7 million metric tons of e-waste that we generated in 2020 alone. Off of that, 17.4% was recycled. We also produce 400 million tons of plastic waste every single year, off of which 9% has been recycled in 2022. And I don't think we're far off a year later. Then I read some statistics about bikes and cars, which are equally shocking. When the complete life cycle of the building such machines are taken into account, a bicycle emits 21 grams of CO2 per passenger per kilometer traveled, versus 271 grams for a passenger car. So it's an order of magnitude less with a bike. And there are 1.4 474 billion vehicles on Earth in 2023. 1.4 billion. If that's not
crazy.
shocking enough, I've collected some numbers about waste animals. So waste that we as human beings generate from the animal industry. And as it turns out, worldwide, waste animal bones are a large type of waste from the food industry, and domestic waste both, with an estimated global slaughter production of WABs exceeding 130 million metric tons. And then just to quote Ella from her bio on her homepage, 46% of an animal is wasted after processing. So we human beings seem to waste a lot. Also, we seem to create a lot, 1.4 billion cars. So my question, I would start with Ella. What led you to this path?
I think you said it beautifully before. It's between we waste a lot and we create a lot. And I think starting as a designer, you always are driven by a purpose. Or I don't know, a designer would probably protest if I'm a designer, and an artist would protest if I'm an artist. Material researcher would also protest. I'm something in the middle. But I think back in the days, if we think about Memphis, for example, they were driven by the fact that there was just furniture and wood and boring. So they started doing furniture in green and purple and plastic and new materials.
Memphis, sorry. Memphis? What's
Memphis. That? Memphis, oh, you don't know the Memphis.
No.
That's amazing. I love it because I love to talk about it.
Okay, good.
It was a group back in the days. I don't want to give exact numbers because I don't know them. But they were a group. It was actually founded by Sotsas. He was already 6 years old by then. And it was exactly that. So it was basically, there were a lot of furnitures around and objects in design and art that were more really rigid, woody, simple, not too crazy. And so they started to just use a lot of different materials. They went crazy with the shape and the colors. So everything you see in these museums that is like yellow, blue, pink, whatever, big dots, that was like starting in Memphis. I think one of the most famous objects is probably the vase of Sotsas called Phallus, which looks like a penis and is pink and is a vase. And he was like, why should we have a clean, simple vase? I'm going to put it there and let people buy it.
What year roughly are we talking? Which decade or so?
I think it must be the 60s.
Okay.
It must be. I mean, my art teacher would probably kill me now by not knowing. So please, while Kate is speaking, I'm going to research that and just talk it later. So yeah, it is not too far because my glass blower used to work for Sotsas, and my glass blower is old but not too old. So I think it can't be too longer. Exactly. And so they were driven by the fact of changing the design world or doing their input by just changing everything. And now we have this new generation of creatives, I want to say. And we love to create. I love to create new things. But we're also somehow critical with that because we know we shouldn't. We should create a new yellow chair or green chair that is nice and beautiful because people will throw this chair away or they will throw the chair away that they had before. And so for us, like we're going in different directions, maybe in technology, as you said, or into mobility or into material to kind of find a way of still being creatives and getting our ideas out there, but also not creating more waste or on the opposite, actually reducing that waste. And so I was driven by being part of this by focusing on the material side and the recycling.
Oh, amazing! I was looking a bit into this industry. It's a proper industry. The way we raise animals, we eventually slaughter the animals, and we process everything. And there seems to be the major part of what comes out of a dead animal is, apart from the stuff that humans consume, the other part is used largely in industry. And there is something called bone char, which is used to filter water. So humans seem to be very keen on trying to find creative uses of such materials or such waste, let's say, but they don't seem to be doing it in the, let's say, circular economy way, so that we are trying something. We don't seem to be able to recycle the most of it. And that leaves us to be, I suppose, creative, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of it. I'm sure you all know that there are large patches of plastic waste circling out in the oceans. So big, it's actually virtually impossible to get rid of them. But I'd like to get into this, how to make use of this waste material a bit later in the show. I'd like to actually ask a question to Kate along the same lines. Like, we in Europe, we are kind of accustomed to using bikes, and I guess this kind of emerged because of the way our road networks are set up, and it's not always easy to ride to go by car from A to B, especially in this very urbanized areas. And I know there has been a movement in the States to get people on bikes that got accelerated with the appearance or the emergence of COVID a few years ago. And I was looking into this project that you are very much of a part of, which was basically taking people from their cars, I guess, onto their bikes with this great Sign Hunt 2020, which happened not so long ago. And I want to ask you, what got you there? What was your motivation to do this?
Awesome. Thanks, Florin, and nice to meet you all. And for those listeners, thank you very much for being here and joining us. Florin, I don't know if you can tell, I'm an Australian who is in San Francisco, and we've been here about 12 years. And what got me into biking is I needed to find a different avenue, because I didn't think that our systems for environmental sustainability were going in a manner that I wanted to see in my world. And so I decided that I'd start with biking because it's something that I could do. And it's something that most people love to do. And part of that was project managing different projects around the community. And this particular one was with Valley Water in San Jose. They specifically are around managing the water, as in the big reservoirs around our community. And this project came about because of the fact that they lost their signs. They didn't know where they were around the community. Now, how crazy is that?
This is like direction signs, you mean?
Direction signs and information signs, like, this is our reservoir. They couldn't tell you where these signs were.
And what's the name of the place? What's the name of the place again? The Valley what?
Valley Water.
Valley Water. So for our listeners, watchers, whatever, where is this about, geographically speaking?
San Francisco, an hour out of San Francisco, called San Jose.
Okay.
Anyway, so they couldn't find their signs. They hadn't geolocated them when they'd put them out there. And as a result of that, they didn't know where they were. They couldn't tell you what shape they were in, whether they needed to be replaced, what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. And so they came up with this idea that they were going to go around the community and locate them and tag them and do what they needed to do. The problem is they had so many, they didn't realize they had so many. And so they ended up having to go, well, we can't get there by car. We can't get there by foot because there's just too many and they're too spread apart. What about biking? And so then they approached SVBC, who I was working with, Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, and we got out there and we began a project to get the community involved. And it just happened that it was around the beginning of COVID. You know, when people were stuck indoors, people were really needing to get outdoors. And we said, right, we'll set up this project where you get to jump on your bicycle. The community gets to jump on their bicycle. They can go separately. They can go as a family. You can go and geolocate or tag. We set up a program. They tagged these signs. They took photographs of these signs, and we were out grabbing these signs around the community through the COVID era. And the project ran about 4 to 6 months. It was fantastic. We had some really great numbers out there. There was from young to very old and male, female, you name it, all genders. It was a fantastic awakening of how enjoyable just being out in the environment is. And that to me is the key to biking, that we've got to get back to the environment. We've forgotten who we are by being in these big houses. We've forgotten the environment. We've forgotten how important our environment is to us and how we are part of the environment. We're not separate. We are part of this beautiful thing called nature.
I was looking at these pictures that are on the website. They're just gorgeous. Just dropped that gorgeous. I just want to quote some numbers. What this event was about. So 1,700 bike rides, locating 4,318 valley water signs. That's just, and we're talking about 350 Santa Clara County residents who signed up for this.
Say those stats again. Say those stats again, Florent. Say the stats again.
1,700 bike rides.
Okay.
Locating 4,318 valley water signs. 350 residents did this altogether. I was trying to find the data as well about the signs. I am, amongst a few things, fascinated about data. I couldn't find. It would have been incredible to be able to find this 4,000 odd data points, but I'm sure that they are somewhere. And Simon knows very well about this, as in our daily job, we absolutely love open data and what we can do with that. And this was something I couldn't really find yet, but I'm sure that it is there somewhere.
So, Kate, it was like a kind of community mapping project, right? With with bikes as the kind of vehicle. Yeah. Did you also move the signs around, or just tagging them?
No, we didn't move any signs, I promise. That would have been a Halloween trick, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like to put them, like if they're in the wrong place. Sometimes you see that in Berlin, right? Like people like swivel the signs around to point in the wrong direction for a laugh.
I'm sure there was some of that going on, but no, we didn't pointedly go and do that to folks. It was a good project, and definitely a way, you talk about timing. We talk about the right consequence, right timing, and going with the Integra meditation, going with the river of life. And this just happened around COVID. And I can't emphasize enough how enjoyable it was to see folks just smiles on their faces and collecting these signs and collecting these photographs. And then we allocated winners, and really got out there and tried to be part of the community. And I think, we're supposed to be apart from each other, but together we were doing this. So that was an amazing accomplishment, even just in 2020.
Did some of the relationships carry on in the community? Has it done other things? Do you know?
They have big. It's not as much, I think, because of the fact that COVID has waned down in the community and it is not as prevalent. But there's still many opportunities, and I think that's the key. That it doesn't mean that it's finished. It just means that there's still opportunities to go. But I'm really interested by Ella's bone furniture. I'd like to see some of it.
Yeah, do you have some?
Show us some that you can show us on the share the screen.
Or around you.
Hold on a second. I mean, I'm mostly surrounded by some of it.
Okay, bring it. Because I was going to say the other thing I do is I do some art, and my art is specifically around using recycled materials.
Ah, cool.
So here it comes.
Da, da, da.
Da, da, da. So the first thing I have is here a glass tumbler. I think that were the ones that you saw, Simon.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. So maybe you could describe that for people who are listening to this. You could describe it maybe?
Yeah, perfectly. So it's this opaline bone glass that I'm creating. And basically, I will talk about it more later. It's basically, I have it in semi-finished tools in a granulate or as sticks. And then I create, depending on the customer, I create product out of it. And this was a project when Simon and me met, where there was a eco dinner, kind of a zero waste dinner, and I had a time, like a 1 day with a glass blower to create 40 water glasses and wine glasses. And so I needed a simple shape that was doable. Like my poor glass blower was sweating because I was just commanding.
What's your glass blower's name? We should give it a shout out.
His name is Thorsten Rötsch. He's amazing. He has a studio close to Dresden, so I work with different experts. The glass blower who developed this glass with me is called Peter Kuchinke. He was even the first German Murano glass blower that ever got the Murano, glass blower maestro name.
Certification or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It was not a big thing back then that there were Germans. He was also the one who worked for Sotzas. And I think he even recommended me Thorsten because he's just amazing, very precise and very skilled. And so he did this for us. As I always say, not just me.
And just Murano glass, I know a little bit because I was in, my girlfriend likes to go to Venice. Well, you know Francisca too, right? And she goes to Venice, and that's where Murano glass is from, right? And that's one of the reasons why, I don't know, but it's very strongly associated with Venice, right? This glass blowing stuff.
I mean, Murano was just famous for being so skilled, having such a big community of amazing glass blowers. It was also some sort of myth going on. So until today, it's not usually I stand next to Thorsten or Peter, look at the things, we talk while doing it and all sorts of stuff. That's not happening in Murano. If you work with someone nowadays, it's like you barely see the maestro blowing.
Yeah.
It's very distant. It has this myth going on. They were very skilled. They developed the most beautiful glasses, the most skilled chandeliers they did. And they also have a lot of waste. By the way, I'm not sure if I can tell the secret, but there's a beach in Murano, very hidden. You have to go to areas you wouldn't want to go, where they dumped all the glass waste back then. Because they didn't really bring it to any, because it's glass. Like they have a lot of toxic things in it, because it was like back in the days. And there's a beach, when you know where it is, it's amazing, because it looks like they have glass stones. But no, it's just all trash. And it's a beach full of it. It's like beautiful. You have to go treasure hunting.
Yeah, good idea.
Amazing.
Kate, would you maybe turn your camera off and on again? Because it's frozen, at least for me. Maybe, I don't know if anyone else.
I can do that.
it's off now.
Oh,
Oh, that's really interesting, Ella. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, there's trash everywhere, and I think you need to really start talking to people, in my opinion, at least, to really find the sources. Because at least when I started, there's sources of waste that we don't even know about. And
Right.
you really have
Yeah.
to get in touch with experts of the most different fields and really start talking again to actually find out what it is, where it comes
Interesting.
from.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I wouldn't have found any of these waste areas that I'm working with now. So I think that's also a bit of a flaw of our modern times, to just, always go, I don't know, it's not about community anymore. It's not about talking anymore, I have the feeling. And that is basically everything that we need to make it work.
Yeah. Hey, Ella, you're talking about locations around the world where things have been dumped, and then those resources are seen as something enjoyable now. Do you know of any others?
What do you mean by, if I know, like, different waste sources around the world?
Oh, like you're talking about the beach, the glass beach.
Yeah, I mean, there are many sources of waste. I know most of them because of the experts I'm working with. So it's mostly around Europe. I mean, I think the waste that I loved the most about Berlin, actually, was talking to a guy on the flea market here. Here's a little flea market, and he's digging out old vessels from trash mountains outside of Berlin that happened around like wartime, when there was still no plastic. And that was basically also for me the beginning, because he digged out these beautiful little vessels. They were very like clean, modern, minimalistic, had a beautiful glimmer with it. And then he told me it was for shoe cream. And I was like a bit confused. But after I understood, like I saw it in the shoe cream, and I was amazed that back then it was having a bit of mistakes, probably because it was like fast hand labor, simple clay, a simple salt glaze. It was just for shoe cream. And now with the time, suddenly something that was just a day-to-day object got a value, because now we love these mistakes because it means it's no industrial production. And we love the nude colors, and we love the simplicity in objects. I was like, okay, so time can change value from waste to something beautiful. Like I see the glass waste in Murano. I have tons of it here. My partner kills me every time because I have a suitcase full of these glass things lying around. But I was like, okay, maybe a designer or creative can be that time changer and like speed it up and create something valuable out of the waste today and not 50 years. So yeah,
that is true. I actually have a small story about this, because as I was renovating my place many years ago, I had this worker coming to do the doors, and he told me that, and I asked him, I mean, I have some pretty old doors in here. Is it like anything that can be done about them, because they kind of look old? And then he said, you have no idea. In Berlin, there is a market for buying and selling old doors. And they are so valuable because people do value 100 years old doors and frames and everything that you might think that they're just worthless. They gain this vintage value, and you wouldn't believe, even the doorknobs, they are extremely valuable the older they are. And you would think that they're throwaways, but in fact they're not. And this is indeed a way to recycle or to resurface old things that you would otherwise throw away at the garbage dump. I found that fascinating.
No, I love it, Florent. I was going to say two things for me that came up. First one, I see from my perspective the sign hunt, right? Something that potentially could have been just wasted. They might have had to just restart from the beginning, but they decided to turn it into something that the community could get involved in. So, nothing wasted was used as something positive. And then the second thing is, there is so many things that, even for example, old bicycles. I had a bicycle that was old and it was deteriorating quite significantly. someone picked it up from my front driveway and said, "This is fantastic. I'm going to hang it on my wall." And that's what they've been doing. So they've got multiple bikes hanging on their wall. And it's not just bikes. There's all sorts of things around the world that we're reusing. Old plastic water bottle containers in art, all sorts of things. I use old tires. I reuse all sorts of, okay, for example, Amazon brings out things to you in containers, in bags. You can reuse those bags instead of throwing them out. Instead of having plastic bags on the go, you have these containers on the go ready to use and give them away as gifts, all sorts of opportunities.
It is true, but sadly, I think lately in the radio, I heard a bit about this fact that we have also, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but at least in Berlin, so Germany, we have some of these, how do you call them, zero waste shops where you have to bring your own little containers and stuff to buy food.
Yep.
And they said that they all have to shut down one by one by one. And I was a bit confused because it was like, I thought we're getting, being more aware, but then I realized myself, I'm never going there. And the reason I'm not going there, of course, is like first expensive, but I mean, bio company is also expensive. It's not for everyone. Not everyone can afford it, but also not everyone can afford like bio company. But it's also this logistic. Like we love to be ecological and recycle as long as it's not really harming us in our routines, in our things. And I think just to think about, you have a full-on day and you have to go shopping for groceries. And then to think about, I go home first, get the empty jugs, like go there. There must be something why people are not doing that, even though they could, and there is the opportunity. And I was like quite amazed because I was like, yeah, why actually?
Yeah, I did it for a while, like collecting nuts and other things from the store. And you take a jar, or you buy a jar and then you take it and but yeah, I didn't do it for that long, I guess.
Yeah, one fascinating thing I've heard, read on the internet. So COVID changed a lot of things. It just, if you look at these graphs of humans doing all sorts of waste generation, and then COVID came, and you would think that these graphs would just go down, and indeed they go down. They did go down. All of this, the cars were not on the road that often, so the noxes that were generated in the atmosphere actually came down a bit. But then the shocking one that I've heard, that I read about, is the plastics that got created, just churned out by human beings. I was really thinking that the trend is actually going down. But then I read that the trend has just slowed. It's still going up. We still generate more and more and more every year. And the thing about plastics, they cannot actually be recycled that much. I mean, if they could, they would have been probably for a while now. I mean, we recycle so less of it. I quoted a number at the beginning. It is just, it's not going to be enough. And we also, humans, we like to think that we do things to make this situation better. We invent a bunch of things, including this one, that you bring your own container to fill it up with food at the grocery shop. And we like to think that other human beings are doing it, but somehow we end up us not doing it. So I think we are definitely part of the same sort of trend issue, where we seem to generate more than the last year and the last year and the last year.
There are some differences though, right? I mean, I personally wash my hair now, my fantastic hair, with like just a hair soap, right? So like I don't use like a shampoo in a bottle. I haven't quite got my kids doing it yet, but I mean that even just like shampoo bottles, right? If you go into your bathroom and look, so hair soap is a good one. And yeah, just and bags for the bakery. I take these string bags and stuff. So there are, I guess there are improvements, right? But it's
oh, definitely.
But it's slow. It's incremental. And we're talking, 2050, 2070 is the point where, we have no point to turn around as far as the greenhouse gases go. So, I mean, it's now 2023. We have 22 years or more, just slightly more, to get our act together. And it's taken how many years? That's the interesting part. We've come from these hunter-gatherers in little huts, and we're just incrementally making these changes. And so I was going to say and bring up this, it's an old organizational rule. Has anyone heard of the 85-15 rule?
No, the 80-20 rule. Is it 85? I don't know.
This one's 85-15. It might be the same rule. Who knows? It might be interesting. Across the seas, we've changed it by 5. Anyway,
okay.
The 85-15 rule is that organizations, it's all about, it was supposed to be all about your employees. The employees have done the wrong thing. Right? And it's the job of the employees to get the job done correctly. In fact, the potential to eliminate the mistakes and errors lies mostly in improving the systems through which the work is done. And so the observation is that if we can change the system that we're operating, as in the human system that we have perpetuated for millennia, then maybe we will minimize the waste that we are having, or at least we'll figure out a different way to use that waste more effectively.
I wanted to say the same thing. I think, thanks, Kate, for that, because that's exactly what I'm thinking about. It's like the problems that I'm meeting every day in my work are the regulations. And they're sometimes so insanely, how to say it polite, stupid. that they are really like working against me. I was recently on a talk, I was in February, with a woman who was basically part of a company which is doing what I do. I'm doing scalable biomaterials. So she's working on exactly that. We have different biomaterials. We think about recycling and new innovative resources, and in bigger scales. So it's not just one waste, one glass or something. They're doing chairs, whatever. And the reason it worked way better, faster for them was because she was from the Netherlands, and you wouldn't get any state funding anymore if you couldn't provide a circularity.
So regulation, basically. Regulation.
Exactly. Yeah. Which also means that now hospitals came to this company, which was quite small at the beginning. It was like, we have all these little plastic things now, and we made it into a granulate, but we have to get rid of it somehow. And then it all starts.
Yeah. But so it's kickstarting the circular stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm working in a country where to dump 1 ton of glass grinding sludge, which is, to describe it, a fine glass meal that is happening every time you sand or cut a window glass, which is pure window glass, because often the problem with waste is that it's mixed with other things and difficult to sort. This is not. Yes. It's pure glass. It's like high quality. It ends up on the landfill completely, and 1 ton of disposing it on the landfill is 115 euros per ton. With these cheap prices and just easy dumping it on the landfill, it's not going to work. Like we need to work against that. And of course, I know that if you're increasing the price for it, then we have bigger amounts of illegal waste dumping. I know that. We have to find different systems. But then every time I'm saying, or often I'm saying, otherwise it wouldn't work if everybody is saying it. But often I hear like fundings, I'm saying like, hey, I found a solution for your glass grinding sludge. Here's an idea. You search for innovative ideas. Here's one. They only want a bit of innovation. They want like these small steps. They don't want the big ones.
So we're talking like taxing waste in a sense, right? Would that describe it a bit?
Yeah, taxing waste and just forcing a bit with regulations to create circularity. Not forcing so much. I mean, there always has to be a way, because if you just say it's going to be expensive to dump your waste, nobody's, then we have illegal. But in general, to like looking at the Netherlands or looking at other countries doing it, we just need more regulations going on that waste and like finding new ways. That's why with my local productions, I'm trying to like pay people for the waste again. So create new value chains so people would like to participate and be part of this instead of feeling forced by it.
Interesting.
I was going to add to that, Ella. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I was going to say, look, in San Jose in 2019, they were shipping their plastics, their piles of paper, piles of plastics, the recycled materials, over to China to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So instead of skipping them here and trying to figure things out.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
And China at some point said, no, we don't want some of this stuff, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to figure out what to do. But there's been countless organizations around the world who've said, we'd like to be able to recycle, but we just don't have, like, we're not getting the money to be able to continue in this operation. We're not getting what we need to be able to continue in this, working this process. So I don't know. I mean, there's obviously steps that need to be taken, but we are not in the process. We're not in a place to be able to go that next step and say, right, we're going down here. I suppose one thing that's interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one thing that's interesting is that, there are organizations now going, right, I'm going to use whatever you have as a waste, and I'm going to use it to build old playgrounds or build playground equipment, right? The recycled plastics to build the playground equipment.
Yeah.
That's just one example. There are numerous examples of exactly that, where we're using the waste to build something and then buying it back, so they're making money as a result of that.
Yeah, I'm always saying it's also like that's a great focus of just like creating new value chains by repurposing the waste we're having. So the moment you find a new function and put it in a different area of using it, you find a new marketplace and you can use it. But it just needs a bit of help and a bit of push. And again, often a chain of people working together. And I think that was what amazed me by the difference as a designer working in Italy, for example, than in Germany. Because even though I was working for quite a big design studio in Milan, they had quite big projects, so needed a big amount of some materials. But somehow all the producers, they were in Italy. So to most of them, I just traveled with a train, or someone came with some samples, passed by the studio. And I was like amazed how all these little production sites seem to be still there, even though it's like Milan. And in Germany, it's different. In Germany, I had the feeling as a designer, there are things that I can work with in very small amounts, like 1 or 2 objects or pieces, or like really, really big. But this middle part of where something can grow, like recycling can grow, where you can produce something in like 100 pieces, they barely exist anymore. So when I started working with my materials, so as I mentioned, I'm working with bones, but for example, also with glass grinding sludge or other things, I needed to track these little companies in Germany. And there are some. There's, for example, Magna Glass Ceramic. They're amazing. They're close to Halle. And they create huge facades and like tops also for kitchen, but also like huge facades out of recycled glass. And I just wondered why they're not more famous. I mean, they are around there. They managed to use like 100% recycling in facades, but it's very little. And it's like, yeah, you have to find your experts working together. We're working on a new system now. They were the ones that were brave enough and said, Ella, we're going to buy you this oven you need, and we're going to tackle this like grinding sludge together.
Oh, great. Great.
That's great.
Great.
That's cool.
So, Ella, is this an exception or a start of a trend? Because you sounded like it's more of an exception than a beginning of something that would be able to scale up.
I mean, do you mean like, I think like recycling in general is a trend, and that's great. It's also increasing the greenwash, sadly. So I'm not sure how much more recycling we actually do. I think I talked about it to Simon in the cafe, realizing it about the leather when I entered this animal processing company close to Munich. He told me that he's skinning the animals, like the dead animals, before processing the leftovers. So this is how we create the leather. Then it's sorted and shipped to another company. But he wasn't doing it for many, many years because the production of the leather was just not profitable anymore, which didn't mean that the leather didn't exist. It was just in the mush with the other rest. On the other side, there are many companies producing vegan leathers. And I have to say, there are some companies doing great jobs. They really tackle the problem of like working on leather alternatives. But it's also for especially big companies that are very hip in Berlin. I don't want to say in some names, but big brands that most of Berlin people wear. If you dig deeper into what the vegan leather is, you will not find an answer. And if you really, really dig deep, you will find out it's plastic again.
Right.
They're not lying, it's vegan leather, but it's also just greenwashing to produce more plastic. And I think nowadays, I mean, it's a trend, we're recycling, which is great, but we have to be even more aware of what is actually recycling and what is greenwashing. And that's, a new tackle, like a new problem also for our consumers, because we don't have the time to always check. And I had the same with these chickens. Me as a city kid, for the first time when we had in Germany these eggs where it was like, we raise also the male chicken. Do you say that? Male chicken?
Rooster.
A rooster?
Yeah. Rooster. Thank you. That's the right word. I was like amazed because I never thought about that fact. I was like, of course, I bought the free running eggs of like chicken that were allowed to run free, but I never thought about the male. And then I was like, okay, this makes sense. I never thought about it. So the consumer is like, we can just deal with what we have and we don't think further. I didn't. I was a city kid. I never thought about it. And so, yeah, I think we can't ask our consumers to always think, what does it mean to have vegan leather now?
Well, we could ask them, right? I mean, we should. I mean, people should be thinking about that. Kate, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, look, I've been delving into the community aspect, like trying to help others to be more recyclable, help the school be more recyclable, and in all things that we use. And the biggest thing that keeps coming up is we don't have enough information about products that people have and use. Even on Amazon, Prime, you look at the products that they've got on sale, and they're doing something which is, a starting point, putting a green label to show that this is environmentally friendly. But what does that mean? Is there a % of recyclables in that product? How do they use it? Like, there's not enough information. We almost need to go back to the drawing board and really come up with a consumer website or a consumer tag that we can use and go, yep, I can 100% say that's recyclable, that's going to the right place all the time. I'm going to back this product. And I keep saying that to the schools, keep saying that to the community that I talk to. Yeah,
So
we need,
Yeah,
We need to
I
be
think
able to do that.
we maybe talked about that, Kate, didn't we? Some product, some app which can give a thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of how green and how much CO2 or water is used and so on and so forth.
It just
But
takes
it
so
can
much
go even
time.
beyond.
It's like I for me, it's like standing in the drugstore and wanting to buy a shampoo. And I know that there are many companies that are still animal testing. Maybe not the company that is like written on the label, because that's not allowed in Europe. But you can be sure if a company is selling in China, they have to do animal testing. So all these big companies as like Chanel or Bobbi Brown or all these, they're all doing animal testing. So you check and then it says vegan, but then you're like, okay, vegan, how vegan? Because then there's some little things written with this vegan. So I'm sticking to the shampoo I have, because otherwise this is a mess and it takes ages to figure out which shampoo, washing powder, cleaning things you can actually buy without feeling guilty, because they use a lot of beagles in animal testing, and I myself have a beagle.
Yeah, they still use beagles. Oh, poor things.
Oh, that's terrible. Look, I am going to say it's not just the pharmaceutical products, it's also the food we eat. We stand in the aisles, right, trying to figure out, okay, now does this work for my body? Am I going to have a reaction, or is it going to, and is it environmentally friendly? Is this a product that I can get behind, or is it a product that I really have to be concerned about, and where the waste's going to, and what they've used to even build the product to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, Kate, you're bringing a very valid point. There is labeling that happens here in Germany as well, and also in the European Union. All sorts of efforts to unify this kind of labeling. Of all countries, somehow Germany seems to be the more relaxed about this, having some even invented sort of labeling that you just don't know where it comes from and what it's supposed to mean. So this almost begs, I mean, you brought up a global company, Amazon is doing this, or trying, or I don't know. I don't want to call it greenwashing because I don't know enough about it. But it almost begs the question, why don't we have a global labeling system? It doesn't need to be in words. It can just be in little signs, and people get accustomed to a global signage, if you like.
Yeah.
And we don't have this. We cannot even agree on putting a label on GMOs. I mean, there's a huge discussion going on in the European Union, and I think beyond of this, whether genetically modified foods should be labeled or not. I mean, it's 21st century. We are not agreeing whether we should hide that effectively from the consumer or not. So that's our baseline at this point.
Which is sad when you think of it. It goes back to that 85-15 rule that we were talking about, right? It's that system.
It is.
But I also think sometimes with these labels, we have a lot of labels going on. And I think that it's also about like the companies always finding these little loopholes of like trying to, then you say like, oh, this is really green. But the moment you start digging deeper, it's like this labels, I don't know, companies are smart. They always find like little loopholes. And I also realized that, especially starting in my research about what was written in the internet, and I somehow realized that this doesn't add up, like this doesn't work. Something is wrong here. And just by like really talking to these companies themselves, I realized what's actually going on. I mean, the best example that I kind of need to say is that there is this myth going on that we're using everything after slaughter. Like a lot of people tell me, but they're like, aren't we using everything? And I mean, I understand it. That's probably what I would have thought before. But it turns out it's not. I mean, if you're a big slaughterhouse, then you can afford to sterilize, separate, and cool the animal leftovers that are happening after slaughter. But if you're a smaller company, then the prices are so like small that it doesn't make sense for you to do that sorting and cooling and sterilizing. You just don't have the infrastructure and the people working for it there. So, which at the end results in that these big mass slaughterhouses, they can sell, for example, still their bones to a company that is producing gelatin out of it, because they just have so much of it. But the bio butcher, I saw it on their bill. The bio butcher, even though like Gut Kerko, for example, here outside of Berlin that I'm working with, they don't have just 3 cows. They have many cows, but they still don't have enough, which means that there's a company coming by, taking all their animal byproducts, and they're basically burning it as category 1, which says kind of it's like toxic leftovers. And they're certainly not toxic. So they have to pay for the leftovers to get destroyed, while the mass slaughterhouses, they can still sell the leftovers to get further produced, which also results in that all the gelatin we have and all the other leftovers, they're coming from mass slaughterhouses.
Interesting.
So it's a bit of tricky.
I did a little bit of looking around about the origins of recycling, and I found a couple of words which are in the kind of English language, at least in Britain anyway. So we call our rubbish collectors, we call them the dustmen. You know, in England at least. I don't know if you know that phrase. Florent, do you know that phrase, dustman?
First time I'm hearing.
Yeah. Okay. So we would call them a dustman, and that, you know, and that goes back to when guys would come around and collect the ashes from fires, right? And then those would be recycled to go into bricks. You know, so this is you know, a long time ago. And then there's the word shoddy, right? Have you heard of like shoddy workmanship or something like that? So, okay, so it's a slightly unusual English word, but shoddy means the recycling of wools, like shredded wools, and then recycling it and respinning it into another fabric. So
that's by the way also not happening anymore.
What's that?
That's by the way also not happening in Europe anymore. We can talk about the recycling wool. So
what
happens to wool then? Burns?
Fired up. It's completely burnt.
It's burnt.
Like this is the shocking. Sorry? This is the most shocking thing.
The wool is burned, Kate. Yeah, it's like I have a good friend. She's working on that topic because the sheeps we're having, at least in Europe or in Germany, are not the preferred mohair or something sheeps. So we don't
sheep,
like
singular sheep. It's
sheep?
no S.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we have this sheep, and sheep is quite scratchy.
Sheep.
And so also the processing of this wool, the labor here would be way too expensive. And so, which ends up in the wool being burnt.
But I bet there's like could be a business opportunity there, or a technical opportunity, right? If you can do that fast.
She's working. Yeah, she's you could hire her for the next podcast. Her name is Jessica Farmer, and she's doing like robotic with it. She's using the waste tool, and she's using she's basically, as like I'm doing it, she's using ancient techniques, so the felting, but modernized, so with the robots.
Interesting.
Solve the problem.
So I had one more question for Kate. Kate, how do you any like opportunities for recycling in the bicycle world, do you think? Like, how can we, I don't know, is there any way to mix and match these two worlds a bit together? So,
well, I mean, I suppose we were talking about the art on the wall, the bicycle art on the wall. There's earrings that you can build with the chains.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
right. Mm-hmm. There's what else is there? You can, if you can get the parts, you can melt down the steel, and you can reuse the steel potentially, but that's a lot of work.
But I think I heard about cycle paths that were made out of recycled plastics or something like that. Like,
But
surprise me, but yes, that's a potential. But is that built out of old bicycles or just old plastics?
No, just I think old plastics.
Yeah, old plastics. But that's considering that in the early 2000s, the amount of plastic waste this is from UN, the amount of plastic waste that we generated rose more than a single decade than it had in the previous 40 years. Which makes you just shudder to think how shoddy we've become.
How shoddy, there you go, this word shoddy. Yeah. I wonder what the conflict, so Ella, you were talking about earlier, this conflict with the design that a designer might feel, right? They want to create something, but they also don't want to create something. And I mean, businesses have this. I guess businesses don't have too many conflicts, right? They just, if they can build something and sell it, they just do. But
but there's a thing that I saw, obviously not in Germany again, but in Denmark I've seen it. But I think it's spreading to other countries as well. And I don't want to be too mad at Germany, maybe also to Germany again. There was like green kayak. So I was using it. So basically you could rent a kayak in Copenhagen. I can go out for free if I bring back a bucket full of trash back.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool idea.
And I thought about it when Kate said that, and like this group like coming together and this story with the signs. And I was like, that would be also, because we always rent bikes if we go somewhere. And it's always also quite expensive. So
great idea.
Cycle biking. You say like, here's a bike for a day. If you come back with that backpack or something, it's free.
So I don't know if you know the Fusion Festival outside Berlin. It's a big like electronic dance music festival, and they do the same thing. So when you get your ticket, you go for, I don't know, 3 or 4 nights or something. I did this a few months ago with a mate of mine, and they give you like a ticket, and if you take a trash bag full of stuff, then you get 10 euros back or something like that. And it's quite effective. Quite effective.
That's a good system as well. Festivals are very wasteful, I'd say, in general.
So the only thing with that business design, Ella, that you just suggested, that they're trying to rent out bicycles. They're not going to make money if you give it to them for free. So I think that is one of the other, infrastructure requirements that we might need to rethink, is the whole, all of us, and Tago Meditation talks about this a lot, is we need to rethink that we have to get and have this amount of money. We have to keep growing to earn money. Instead of that rethinking that need to do together, maybe it's more about happiness. Maybe it's more about something else. Maybe it's more about being productive. Maybe it's more about, living on this planet in a sustainable manner.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I just think we're again at this topic of, obviously they're not going to earn money with that way. But if we have more regulations about that, I mean, Denmark is doing it. And I mean, if we think about Berlin, or the people listening to this podcast that are not living in Berlin probably won't know this big drama we had with the money that was invested in like bike lanes and stuff, and was basically wasted because they realized they still prefer the cars. And so if we would just take a little bit of money from that, or a little bit of money or anything that is going wrong at the moment, we could fund projects like this. And I think in general, if we support people by getting more circular or ecological, instead of trying to put some regulations on it, then I think it's just happening way better. If someone says, Ella, you get this for free, because if you collect trash, then you get it for free, then I will do it. And then probably other people will also do it. especially young people or people that don't have that much money. And it's going to be a great effect because people can do activities that don't have that much money. You get younger generations back into recycling and just thinking of the idea of like, what is it to waste and what can we do against it? And I think people feel not like they're constantly new regulations that making their life hard, but actually making it a bit more
positive. So more carrots, like
and
nudges.
More carrots.
We definitely need more carrots.
But make them reach the carrots also sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's, talking of Denmark, I heard about this island, Bornholm, right?
Bornholm.
Yeah. And they are, it's a pretty big island. I looked it up on Google Maps. It's like, halfway between Germany, Poland, and Denmark, and they want to go completely waste free, right? So they have a big like pork like economy there, like so lots of pig blah 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 blah, and they're building a new incinerator apparently, and I don't know, they're going to produce a lot of energy from it, so they will be like self-sufficient, or not self-sufficient, but they. Kate. Well, maybe we should close the call, folks. I think that was a great conversation, right? And Ella, let's get coffee. That would be good.
That'd be great.
And if anyone's ever in San Jose, San Francisco, or Brisbane, Australia, please reach out. I'd love to get to know you.
Fantastic. So we'll put everyone's, like, your contact or LinkedIn or website on the podcast information. But maybe Ella and Kate, you could just say that now, so that your website or LinkedIn, if you like.
Yeah, sure. So my website is like my name. It's like ellaeinhell.com. And that's also how you're going to find me on Instagram. And as Kate said, I'd love to get in touch with everyone who's interested in the topic, has more questions, because I could talk hours and hours about this. I'm very enthusiastic, and it was so lovely to meet you all. And also Kate, to get all, like, hear about your work. It's great to hear that. And if I ever come by to Australia, I'm gonna for sure get in touch.
Awesome. I'd love to connect with you, my dear. That sounds fun. I can be contacted, get in contact with me via linkedin.com, and it's just Kate Plant, KATEPLANT. Very simple, very easy.
Great. Thank you both. It's been an amazing time that we spent together. I hope we all learned something today.
Great. Thanks, folks. And thanks for listening, watching, people, if you are, when it's published. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.